Good morning, everybody. It's been a super interesting start to this conference. We've heard so much about AI, we've heard about models and data, but I think the thing we always need to remember is that this is about our audience. It's about how we exist in their minds. How do we start getting new people to come? How do we start getting them invested in our stories and rooting for us to succeed? From the dawn of time, humans have been telling stories, and that is what, as Rania said, captures people, keeps their attention, engages them, and contributes to them being part of our hospitality stories and our destination stories. We're at a very unique time here in the GCC, especially in Saudi Arabia, but also in Qatar and here in the UAE, as we see new destinations coming online, new properties coming online. But the old standard playbook of driving it from a property-based perspective no longer works. Dubai is constantly the reference point for the region, but this is now a transactional city. It matters if the hotel that's next door to you is cheaper, nicer, has more amenities, but the story of Dubai has now sold itself. When we start looking at new destinations, this becomes a much, much more complex package. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we at Andart see narrative and how we work with our clients to think about this differently. I think I always talk about selling products in the Dubai environment. It's almost like selling shoes. There's something on the market, you choose which one you want, you choose what it looks like, and you move on. When we're talking about NEOM, Red Sea, as I know we have some colleagues from Saudi Arabia speaking after me, this is a very different package. So Ibn Battuta said, it's travel, it leaves you silent, then it turns you into a storyteller. As we start to get new visitors, we need to make sure that they are ambassadors, because realistically, without a story, a place is just bricks and mortar. And globally, we're seeing a proliferation of destinations. If you want sun, sea, sand, luxury, you can go to the Maldives, you can go to Bali, you can go to so many different places. So how are we going to create a narrative that differentiates us from the global market? And then at a destination perspective, especially in Saudi, as we're opening so many destinations at the same time, why are people going to choose us? So what I wanted to talk a little bit about today is some core values, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about lessons that we bring from other domains. So when you're putting the consumer first, so much of what I think we do as an industry is we talk at people. We don't earn the right to be heard. So with many of the destinations I think that we've been building across the region, it's about something which looks very grand, it's a great story, it's very impressive, but people can't necessarily relate to that and see themselves within that part of the story. When I'm talking about a destination or a property, I want people to go, oh, wow, I could hold my 50th birthday party there. I can see my grandchildren growing up there. I can see how this emotionally connects. So the first value I think that is critical is believability. People need to go past the render. They need to see you as a destination which is credible on the global stage. And at the root of that is authenticity. If it looks like everything else, it could be the Maldives, it could be the Caribbean, it could be wherever it wants to be in the world, we have to capture that authenticity to drive our differentiation. Next is trust. With a new destination, especially as we heard from our colleague earlier from tourism economics, geopolitical instability, lack of familiarity with the region. We have huge amounts of new markets that are starting to travel globally, and we want them to come here. But this region, in many ways, for many markets, is still unknown. It's still potentially scary, potentially a black box. How do we start building the trust in those communities that we are a destination which is going to support them again and again and again in their tourism visions, in their life journeys as they start to celebrate all of the different milestones within our destinations. And in that sense, the next value is inclusivity. How do we get people to feel like they can be part of our story. With many new destinations, and I think many new properties, when it's too grand, it's too big, people can't see themselves as being part of that experience. And relatability, it needs to feel accessible. It can't just feel, oh, that's not for me. That's either so ultra luxury that nobody's going to do it, or oh, it looks great, but it doesn't work and resonate for me. So all of those things, I think, from where we stand in the hospitality industry, this has been very much revenue driven. Taking a play from some other industries that we work in, political campaigning, drama, film and TV, you fundamentally have things in a political campaign, and we can use the US example as some successes and failures, which are intangible. This isn't about a room, a piece, a thing. It's about hope, desire, engagement, all of these emotions which people make a choice and then invest in. So as we build our new destinations across the region, how do we start building those kind of reactions from our audience so that they pick us and they want us to win and they want us to succeed? So looking at the Trump-Biden election, I think, is a really good piece. And I think the US elections, we've seen this multiple times. The key thing that President-elect Trump has managed to do is to be a character. He has a strong point of view. He's somebody that people can invest in. When things are too complicated, they don't have a strong, clear, direct sense of why I'm going to do something for you, we miss the point. What the US election, I think, has really put together is that idea of characterization. So how do we build the characters of our destinations across the region so that people go, that's the character. I understand where it is, I understand what it's going to do, and I understand how it's going to change my life. The same thing with drama and film. The reality of a film or a movie that you're sitting there watching Netflix is you're paying for something that is intangible. There's nothing there, there's nothing you can touch, there's nothing you can hold. Yet, this is hundreds of millions of dollars go into each major production, and as an industry, billions of dollars across the world. But we are taking people on an emotional journey. This is not directing one specific lens for them to have a specific social, emotional reaction. They are following us with the ups and downs. So for us, when we talk to some of our destinations in Saudi, we make references to films like Lord of the Rings. It's a whole world, and it's a fictional world, but which people are deeply invested in. And you know, you look at somewhere like New Zealand, which after it was filmed in Lord of the Rings was filmed there was a massive uptick. Was that about New Zealand? No, it was because people had emotionally connected to the idea of this magical kingdom, which then emotionally translated into that destination. So for us to make sure that people are invested in our success, they need to be built into that story. So as a case study, in a previous career, I worked in the space sector. And I was head of government affairs for an asteroid mining company. Now, initially you go, great, space. This is such an easy thing to sell. Everybody loves space, it's really good. Now, first of all, I'm the most disappointing person to meet at a dinner party, because as soon as you start talking to people, people in the back of their heads are going, is he an astronaut? Maybe he's an astronaut. And then when you go, no, actually, I run a marketing, communications, and government affairs department, you're fundamentally a disappointment, and you can't come back from that. So the reality of how we shape those perceptions in people's heads is critical, even when we think we have a card that is a sure win. So in my role, for asteroid mining. Now, asteroid mining initially sounds a combination of crazed and super exciting. So the principle of the asteroid mining business is, how do you build gas stations in space? So why are you mining asteroids? It sounds like we're doing something completely crazy, but actually you're mining it for water, hydrogen and oxygen. Now, when you initially talk about this, again, it sounds like we're talking about Star Trek and going to Mars and doing the whole vision that Elon Musk is driving for us. But that's not going to raise me $100 million, $150 million, $200 million. So my task and my team's task in that specific space was, how do we make this boring? How do we put this in front of an investment team, a legal team, a deal team, and make them go, this feels like it might be a better investment than something extremely traditional. Yeah, as a room full of people, we deeply understand real estate. Why do asteroid mining and why not do real estate? I've got a 10% return, it's going to be easy, and I at least can see that it's going to exist and doesn't have a habit of exploding. So for us, we sat down and we went, what do we need to do? And we came up with a campaign of make space boring. So if you look at space, we can talk about all of those amazing things, all of that adventure, all of that exploration, all of that challenging the new frontiers, or in an investment context, we can talk about this as a margins business. So currently, the cost of getting a kilo of water on the International Space Station is $50,000 a kilo. So if I can do it for $40,000 by developing that water in a space context, I have a market. And then in addition, what is water? It's oxygen and hydrogen, which is what powers satellites. It's what powers rockets. It becomes an enabler for all of those other businesses, all of those other much, much grander, more ambitious projects that we're seeing in the space sector, and that might come to bear. Now, that is something which I can put in front of a lawyer and say, okay, do you want to buy paper mills, or do you want to invest in my asteroid mining, gas station, rockets, radiation protection? And it starts to become something which people invest in. So when I look at traditional hospitality, and I do think the Dubai market is so good, this is paper mills. Many hotels, lots of things, pretty standard. People might want different things within the market. Everybody wants to have the luxury hotel that's nicer than their friends that's next door. But we understand what we're doing, and we can make choices. When we're trying to revitalize a destination like Doha, when we're looking at Neom, Red Sea, Qadiyah, and all of the other amazing destinations that are being built in Saudi Arabia, we have to make a different sell. We have to work out how we emotionally connect with people so they don't want the paper mill. Now, taking again the parallel of that asteroid mining, of what that enables, the challenge we have with these new destinations is that they are not a one hotel, one property, one trick pony. We're building large destinations with multiple properties, with multiple pieces. In the case of Neom, with Living, The Line. In case of Red Sea, I believe we're about 50, 60 hotels is the total projected direction, and all of the other resorts that we're doing. So we have to also get the wider community to consider that this is an enabler for them. As we build that destination, it's worth investing in F&B. It's worth investing in experiences. It's worth investing in all of those different other parts of the value chain that are what is going to make those destinations successful. We don't want to end up being a white elephant, and we don't want to end up being empty most of the year. So again, this is not only about the visitor and the consumer and getting them to buy into the vision that we're putting to. It's also, how do we tell that story to our colleagues and compatriots in those value chain communities? And it's about building that critical mass. So when we look at building this story, what is it that we think is a game changer? What we've just seen from the Trump-Biden election is that humble was not the order of the day. People wanted strong leadership. They wanted something which resonated. Now, whether it will be successful or not, I think the next 4 years we'll find out. But in terms of a message that people were prepared to bet on, that's what resonated. I think for us, the challenge in the region is that we can't come in too hard. So for us, we believe that humble works. I was talking to a colleague from the Maldives the other day, and they went, well, the reality is we are the Maldives. Nobody else is. We're at the top of the tree. We don't need to sell that. So when destinations are still in their genesis, in their building phases, we have to work out how we get people to want to see what the next thing that's going to come, see the next step, see that growth, come back the next year, see more things. I was just talking with with Angie, who's on the team here, and my family moved to Dubai in the early 1970s. She's been here for 30 years. There's pieces that we have seen as this city has grown and expanded that we can connect with that were here 30, 40 years ago. Chicago Beach, the first Habtur Palace, all of these pieces which have been part of that Genesis story. Whereas now, all of our visitors and all of our guests aren't part of that fabric. So when we're looking at these destinations, in Saudi especially, we need to work out how we build that loyalty and build that engagement. So again, coming back to those core values, relatability, authenticity, credibility, and believability. For us, as we've started also to look at the coordination of these narratives and the coordination of these messages, both inside destinations, but also across the country, that is also something that we have to start thinking about how we work together on as a community. Because a Hilton in 5 different places in Saudi doesn't necessarily tell a story that is compelling to drive large levels of business, especially for new markets that perhaps haven't necessarily traveled to a Hilton before. India, China, we've heard so much about them over the last day and a half, but also more established markets. So within a destination, it's again also about differentiating, making sure that each of those elements has a very specific flavor, but it works together, because in the mind of the consumer, it becomes overwhelming. And again, to take back to the Trump and Biden parallel, Trump didn't feel overwhelming. It felt straightforward, it felt simple. Whether you agreed with him or not, you were very clear about what he was saying. The Democratic direction felt confused. I wasn't quite sure, were we doing this today? Were we doing it tomorrow? Is it going to be, it's complicated. And we need to make sure that we don't do the same thing in the destination hospitality space. This has to be crystal clear in the mind of our visitors and of our future tourists to understand what we're doing. And then, as we move down between those destinations, let's just take the Red Sea coast. We have Yanbu, we have Red Sea Global, we have Neom, and we have other destinations and properties that are becoming in. It can't be, well, which one do I choose? Are they all the same? Are they different? I don't really understand it. So being able to craft that narrative internally so people understand what your destination is and what its core spirit is, and then understand how you differentiate that and make those choices between the others is also for us critical. Now, the Saudi context is about to enter a whole new phase. So much today has been about strategy, vision, direction. We're about to start having questions on how do we fight to get people into our hotels, our resorts, and our destinations rather than somebody else's. This is going to become very quickly about numbers and about filling people in the right places. There is huge potential across the region for a massive uptick in tourism, but we have to work out how we build these base pieces of narrative now, so that when it comes to all of the amazing things that our commercial colleagues are so good at optimizing, we have those foundations. So the vote is going to be for us as the GCC, for us as Saudi Arabia, for us as Neom, Red Sea, Yanbu, and for a key property that makes sure that this is the winning ticket within the region and more globally. Thank you so much.